Well, last time we were looking at the Feast of Trumpets again. This will be our third installment in this lesson. Um, we've looked at the Rapture and the whore of Babylon, and this time we're going to look at Jacob's trouble. The deal is when trumpets blows and the rapture happens, there's several corresponding things that go on at the same time. And one of them is the king will be crowned, and the marriage supper to the Lamb is going to come, and Jacob's trouble is going to come. So there's so much going on in the Feast of Trumpets, it has to be covered in sections. We, of course, are interested in the rapture, but there's much, much more happening at the same time or very soon after. I wanted to emphasize it doesn't have to happen exactly when we are raptured. In other words, we could be raptured and a couple of days later the tribulation start. Could be a year later, as far as I know. There's no time limit on that. But during this time of the Feast of Trumpets, the king is going to get married and he's going to be crowned king, and Jacob's trouble is going to start. One of the most important occurrences that happen either simultaneously with the rapture or very soon after will be Jacob's trouble or the tribulation. As the righteous are raised from their graves, the wicked will be left behind to suffer the wrath of God. Many church-going Christians will have to suffer the same fate as the unbeliever, with weeping and gnashing of teeth. Now, this is always a controversial thing of my teaching, is a lot of people teach that if I'm saved, I'm going. Well, that's true if you're following what God wants you to do, and you're the bride of Christ. This was written to the Jews also, as non-believers will be left behind, but the principle still applies to us today. Look at the Lord as he teaches about the hypocrisy in the fasting of the Jews. Isaiah 58:1. Shout, O Lord, don't hold back. Lift up your voice like a trumpet. Declare to my people their rebellions, and to the house of Jacob their sins. They seek me day after day, and are eager to know my ways, as if they were a nation that practices righteousness and has not forsaken the justice of their God. They ask me to reveal just decisions. They are eager to draw near to God. Why have we fasted, they ask, but you do not see? Why have we humbled ourselves, but you take no notice? In other words, they're not seeing any fruit from their fasting and humbling themselves. Look, you fast only for quarreling and for fighting and for hitting with wicked fists. You cannot fast as you do today and have your voice heard on high. In other words, you're just going through the motions and you're not changing your heart towards me. 58 verse 5. This is the kind of fast that I have chosen, merely a day for a person to humble himself. Is it merely for bowing down one's head like a bulrush? For lying on sackcloth and ashes? Is this what you call a fast, an acceptable day to the Lord? Isn't this the fast that I have been choosing, to loose the bonds of injustice and untie the cords of the yoke, and to let the oppressed go free and to break every yoke? In other words, what you're doing is not doing what I want you to do. God is pointing out that they just bow and pray, but have no effect on the people around them that God sent us to minister to. God wants our hearts to change. This is called the day of the awakening blast. The trumpet can blow alarm or it can blow awakening. It can be the coronation of the king or it can be for a wedding. Let's look at the trumpet trying to wake up the king's bride. Daniel 12 verse 2. Many of those who are sleeping in the dust of the earth will awaken, some to everlasting life, and others to disgrace and everlasting contempt. Those who manifest wisdom will shine like the righteousness of the expanse of heaven, and those who turn many to righteousness will shine like the stars forever and ever. Isaiah 26:19. But your dead will live, their bodies will rise. Those who live in the dust will wake up and shout for joy. For your dew is like the dew of the dawn, and the earth will give birth to the dead. And dew always means resurrection. When you're talking about the dew of heaven or the dew on the head of Jesus or whatever, he's talking about resurrection. Isaiah 26:20. Come, my people, enter your rooms and shut your doors behind you. Hide yourselves for a little while until the fury has passed. You remember this day is about shutting doors and opening doors. And entering the rooms is a recall of the Noah's Ark, because they built rooms for all the animals. And so when destruction was coming, God put Noah in the ark 7 days before his wrath fell, and they all went into their rooms and the door was shut. Isaiah 26:21, for see, the Lord is coming from his place to punish the inhabitants of the earth for their sins. The earth will reveal the blood that has been shed on it and will no longer conceal its slain. So this is a judgment day for us, even though we're going to be, hopefully we'll be raptured and put away in our rooms to ride it out while the destruction is going on. How many of us know that the story of Noah and the flood is a type and shadow of Judgment Day? Noah and his family entered the ark, and none of the judgment of God fell on their heads. I was trying to see if anyone got wet, but it was 7 days before the rain even started. So no God's judgment fell on their heads. Isaiah was saying that we must go into our rooms and shut the doors and hide ourselves while the fury of God is released on the earth. Lot was taken away from the blast site, so the judgment of God didn't fall on his family. The rooms mentioned in Isaiah 26:20 could refer to the mansions spoken of in God's house in heaven. In my opinion, we will be protected in our wedding closets while all hell is breaking loose on earth. We will be getting married and witness the crowning of Jesus as king, while the wicked will receive the wrath of God. 1 Thessalonians 4:16, with a shout of command, with the archangel's call, and with the sound of God's trumpet, the Lord himself will come down from heaven, and the dead who belong to the Messiah will rise first. 1 Thessalonians 4:17, then we who are alive and remain will be caught up in the clouds together with them to meet the Lord in the air, and so we will be with the Lord forever. So then encourage one another with these words. The Thessalonians were worried that they missed Jesus' return. And they were trying to explain to them there's going to be a catching up. And that word is harpazo in Greek. But I think in the Vulgate, in the Latin, it's rapture. People will tell you that the rapture is not in the Bible. Well, this is what they're talking about right here. How many of us know about the diaspora? When Israel was conquered by the Assyrians and Babylon, Jews were scattered all across the world. So Jews wanting to keep the feast of the Lord had to know when the new year started to keep the calendar. Trumpets marked the first day of the year of the first of the month. So the whole calendar depended on getting this day right. If you'll notice in the feast days, all of the other days start in the middle of the month. They're somewhere around the 10th or 14th or the 15th, something along those lines. This starts on the first day of the month, which is the new moon, which is that little sliver of the moon when it first shows up. If a Jew was living in Babylon, they had no connection to Israel anymore. So they devised a system of marking the day. The Jews left in Jerusalem kept watch for the new moon, and when they saw it, they started to blow the shofar all day for 2 days. This lasts for 2 days, and that's one of the reasons they call it one long day, or the day that no one knows the day or the hour, because you don't know when you're going to see the moon. The people that heard the shofar would pass the notice from mountain range to mountain range by fires for the news to reach Babylon. Idioms are phrases and words made up by culture to mean something important to them, to represent different things than for other cultures. For America, we might say Happy Turkey Day to mean Thanksgiving. And of course, we know Independence Day is July 4th. Tishri 1 became Tishri 1 and 2 because it took 2 days. And it was known as one long day. It was commonly referred to as the day that no one would know the day or the hour it came. It is commonly believed by the Jews that even Satan doesn't know when this day would start, because he knows that his time is short when this day comes. The whole month of Elul, the shofar is blown every day, except for Sabbaths and Elul 29. Rabbis say even the accuser can't keep up when the Feast of Trumpets will start with all the trumpet blowing. Trumpets has since been known as the day no one knows the day or the hour for thousands of years. Trumpets can't start unless a priest sees the new moon, whether it is seen in the evening, in the middle of the night, or even in the morning daylight. Travelers could see these fires on the hills as they traveled across the deserts to take note of the new year and the new month. So these fires were started probably 15 miles apart, or however long they had to be able to see. And each time they would light one, someone else would light one, and they moved all the way over to Persia. See, so they would know what time this started. 1 Corinthians 2:6. However, when we are among mature people, we do speak a message of wisdom, but not the wisdom of this world or of the rulers of this world who are passing off the scene. Instead, we speak about God's wisdom in a hidden secret, which God destined before the world began for our glory. All this is done for our glory. None of the rulers of this world understood it, because if they had, they would not have crucified the Lord of glory. See, Satan thought he won when Jesus died on the cross. So if they had known that they were making the perfect sacrifice, they wouldn't have done it. If Satan had known the plan of God was to make a perfect sacrifice for the sins of the world, would he not have spared Christ from crucifixion? He thought he had won against God by murdering Christ. Since Scripture tells us no one knows the day or the hour Jesus will return, a Jew knows this is the Feast of Trumpets. The trumpet is blown every day from Elul 1 to Elul 28, and then again in Tishri 1 and 2. Rabbis say this confuses Satan. We can't know this without studying the Jewish laws, traditions, and their culture. On the Feast of Trumpets, the shofar is blown 100 times and then repeated until dark. The first sound is called the tekiah. It consists of one long blast. The next is called the shevarim, or 3 short blasts. The next is called teruah, or 9 quick blasts in short succession. They blow this series 3 times for a total of 9 times for 1 round. They blow this series of rounds for 11 times, so 9 times 11 equals 99 times. The 100th blast is the blow at the last in Judaism, and it's called the last trump. There's only one time of year that you can have the last trump. 1 Corinthians 15:52. In a moment, in the twinkling of an eye, at the last trumpet. For the trumpet will sound, and the dead will be raised incorruptible, and we shall be changed. Paul is saying here that the rapture will happen on the Feast of Trumpets, but you have to understand the feast days to know the last trump only happens on trumpets. Pentecost is known as the first trump. Yom Kippur, or the Day of Atonement, is known as the great trump. Song of Songs 2:10. My beloved spoke and said to me, Rise up, my love, my fair one, and come away. For lo, the winter is past, and the rain is all gone. The Shulamite said, My beloved is mine, and I am his. He feeds his flock among the lilies. Verse 17. To her beloved, until the day breaks and the shadows flee away, turn, my beloved, and be like a gazelle or a young stag upon the mountains of Bether. Notice her beloved calls her to get up and come away. The winter is over. She has been sleeping all winter. And the rain is over. The blessings are gone. She then says, He is mine. Is God yours, or are you bought by him? Then he tells her beloved to go away until the day breaks. The mountains of Bether means separation or somewhere far away. This is a picture of the church asleep. She changes her tune later in the story, but this is a warning for the church in the early verses. So we've already had the first advent of Christ when Jesus hung on the cross. And now he's gone away for a long trip. Song of Songs 3:1. By night on my bed I sought him whom my soul loveth. I sought him, but I found him not. I will rise now and go about the city and the streets, and in the broad ways I will seek him whom my soul loveth. I sought him, but I found him not. Whenever we tell him to go away across the mountains of Bether, he goes away. And if you're looking for him, you're not going to find him. She is still in bed, after he called to her. So he didn't come into bed, but went out and was waiting for her. Then she rises and goes into the broad ways. Broad is the way to destruction, but she didn't find him there. Song of Songs 5 verse 2. The Shulamite said, I sleep, but my heart is awake. It is the voice of my beloved. He knocks, saying, open for me, my sister, my love, my dove, my perfect one. For my head is covered with dew, my locks with the drops of the night. Remember, dew is resurrection. So she's asleep, but her heart is awake. She can hear him speaking, but she can't move. You remember we talked about a man being lowered down into a building that was paralyzed, and then he was told to get up and walk. So that's a picture of the same type of healing here. Song of Songs 5:3. I have taken off my robe, how can I put it on again? In other words, she has taken off his robe of righteousness. She's not living like she should have been living. How can I put it on again? I have washed my feet. How can I defile them? In other words, I'm not going to come outside and do anything. These are people that want to lay around in the church and wait for God to come in, but he wants them to come out. My beloved put his hand by the latch of the door, and my heart yearned for him. I arose to open for my beloved, and my hands dripped with myrrh, my fingers with liquid myrrh on the handles of the lock. Remember, myrrh is the smell of death. She is dripping with myrrh. She's got death all over her because she's not living, waiting for her husband to come get her. Verse 6, I opened for my beloved, but my beloved had turned away and was gone. My heart leaped up when he spoke. I sought him, but I could not find him. I called him, but he gave me no answer. The watchmen who went about the city found me. They struck me. They wounded me. The keepers of the walls took my veil away from me. So the angels struck her. They wounded her. They actually killed her, because these watchmen are angels, and this could be even evil angels. She's been struck, but if you're saved, you're not dead. See, you're just wounded. The keepers of the wall took her veil away from me. If you have a veil, you're destined for marriage to someone. Well, they took her veil away from her. This word sleep in verse 2 is more like putting a dog to sleep than normal sleep. Jesus is outside knocking, trying to get her to come out for the blessings. Water, dew, and rain are the blessings. She says she has taken off her garment, and that would be of righteousness. She wasn't ready to go, so she was left behind. And this knocking was more like a beating. It wasn't like, come out. So he's trying to wake her up. She thought that he would open the door and come in, but he was calling her out. She had myrrh dripping from her hands. Myrrh is the fragrance of dead people. She opened, but he had already gone. The watchman in the city wounded her. She is saved, or she wouldn't be his love. But she paid the price, being left behind here on earth. Taking her veil shows that she has been dishonorable. Prostitutes wore no veils when they were working. Having a veil was considered virtuous. This is a similar tale to the parable of the 10 virgins in Matthew 25. Why wasn't she watching by the window for his return? If you loved your husband and he was coming to pick you up for marriage, don't you think you would be watching for him to come pick you up? Why did she have the doors locked and barred? Did she do any work for her beloved during the day if she slept all winter? This is a picture of the Feast of Trumpets and the people left behind. Therefore, Ephesians 5:14. Therefore, he says, awake, you who sleep, arise from the dead, and Christ will give you light. See then that you walk circumspectly, not as fools, but as wise. If you'll notice in the Bible, always underline fool and wise, and look and see what it takes to be a fool, and look and see what it takes to be wise. Redeeming the time. We're supposed to be doing something while we're here, because the days are evil. Therefore, do not be unwise, but understand what the will of the Lord is. And do not be drunk with wine, in which is dissipation, but be filled with the Spirit. We're not supposed to be doing earthly, carnal things down here, like drinking. And we're supposed to be getting ready to be his bride. In the Song of Solomon, did you notice all the love language used? This woman loved the Lord. She just wasn't willing to do any work for him. He came to her and tried to get her to rise and come out into his blessings. The former and latter rain speak of the blessing of the Lord. He blessed us in his first coming and in his sacrifice, and he will come again with his blessings again. However, the next time he comes, he will be the Lion of Judah and rule with an iron rod. The marriage supper will be with the Lamb, but those left behind will suffer the wrath of God from the Lion of Judah. There are more verses in the Bible about his second coming than his first. Matthew 13, verse 24. Another parable he put forth to them, saying, the kingdom of heaven is like a man who sowed good seed in his field. But while men slept, his enemy came and sowed tares among the wheat and went his way. But then the grain had sprouted and produced a crop. Then the tares also appeared. So the servants of the owner came and said to him, Sir, did you not sow good seed in your field? How then does this have tares? And he said to them, an enemy has done this. The servant said to him, do you want us to go and gather them up? But he said, no, lest while you gather up the tares, you also uproot the wheat with them. Let both grow together until the harvest. And at the time of the harvest, I will say to the reapers, first gather together the tares and bind them into bundles to burn them, but gather the wheat into my barn. We are left here to grow in the Lord together, but we cannot tell the wheat from the tare until it is harvested. If the tare is pulled up before the harvest, the wheat may be pulled up by mistake. The weeds look exactly like the wheat until the wheat matures, and we can tell the difference by its fruit. The person sitting right next to you in the church may have no fruit, but they think they are wheat. This is the scariest thought I can have. I am confident that I am saved, but am I producing fruit pleasing to God? Only God can judge our hearts. The lady in the Song of Solomon spoke of how her heart was moved for her beloved, but thought it work to get out of bed to open the door for her blessing. He never called her a bad name, but to the end called her beloved. Giving the offer of eternal life is the most loving thing our God could do for those he loves, but we seem to treat him as a common thing sometimes. God is love and is looking for someone to love him. I believe his bride will love him as he desires to be loved, but the others that say they love him yet do nothing he asks them to do will have the same lot as the unbelievers and be left behind. You can die to self at baptism or die physically by having your head cut off in the last days. The weeping and gnashing of teeth will become when they realize they played a Christian for years and years and end up facing the beast. They will realize they spent years saying they're Christians yet didn't do enough for Jesus for him to even recognize them as a Christian. How many times did he say to the foolish virgins, I don't know you? If Christianity was a crime, is there enough evidence in your life to find you guilty? This has been at the center of what God shows me every day since I was saved. I've tried to move on to other things, but it always comes back to people thinking they will be raptured, yet they will be left behind on that day. Maybe I'm not doing enough to merit rapture myself. It's why this theme is so strong on me. I just want everyone I come in contact with to ponder where they are in their relationship with the person that will be their spouse. If we are confident in our position with the Lord, then rejoice, because all the blessings of God has to offer belongs to us. If we are wrong, the trumpet blast will be a warning sound and a sound of alarm, and the tribulation is coming. There are so many verses in scriptures that speak of this day. I'm sure God is trying to communicate to his people the gravity of what is coming. Even the workers that come to the vineyard to work the last hour will get the same pay as someone who has worked diligently for decades. Rapture isn't horseshoes or hand grenades. Close isn't going to cut it with God. A spouse is different than a servant. Jesus is the judge of his bride. While reading the Song of Solomon, I just couldn't help reading the words of love from the woman for her beloved, and know I hear them every day in churches all over. But it didn't help her when the harvest was tallied. Someone unable to get out of bed for the love of her life doesn't sound promising right now. The lessons for us today are that she is asleep and not watching at the window for his return. And she opened the door to him after a delay, and he was gone. That lines up with the parable of the foolish virgins. The weeds are growing up with the wheat, but are useless to the farmer if they produce no fruit. The Shulamite bride will eventually work the harvest in the later chapters, but she suffered while learning what God expected her to do. Next time, we'll look at the crowning of the King of Glory. And I thank you.